Welcome to the first ever episode of Real Estate Closing Arguments. A lot of people have told me to create a podcast for a while and just start interviewing people and debating things and talking about things. And lately, we've been dealing with an issue that I think is perfect for the first episode, and it's procuring cause and the changes that have happened since the NAR settlement. So I think this is a really important topic for the industry to be discussing because we're dealing with a situation right now in which so many changes have taken place due to the lawsuits, but the governing bodies over realtors don't seem to be updating anything to talk about these changes. So this is super important if you're a buyer and you're looking at houses in this market. And it's also super important if you are a realtor because you need to understand what's changed, who you're obligating, and what they're being obligated to do. And if something goes sideways, who's really at fault, or at least who should be at fault? So, first of all, the lawsuits made this change happen because somebody sued a bunch of brokerages and NAR and lots of other folks, basically saying, I'm selling a house and I'm required to pay for my listing agent who's selling the property, as well as the buyer's agent. I'm required to guarantee a commission to a buyer's agent, and that buyer's agent is effectively working against me. So imagine you're going to court and you have to pay for the attorney who's suing you. Like that doesn't exist. Now, if there's frivolous lawsuits, then somebody might be able to recuperate lawyer fees, but nobody has to pay somebody to sue them in order to sue somebody else. Like it just doesn't make sense that somebody would have to pay somebody who's working against their best interest. That's why these changes happened. Okay. And those changes were important. Now, we could definitely argue, whether the best thing is happening here, whether the best solution was reached. And I would love to discuss that with somebody on here. But I think the changes, something needed to change. So it's important. What the old system had was a guaranteed commission to a buyer's agent by the MLS. And that's why it was so important for an agent, especially a listing agent, but really any agent, to ask questions whenever they first met a client. Are you working with another agent? Because the only way that agent was going to get paid, the new agent, was if they wrote the offer that wound up getting accepted and closed. They were going to be owed that commission by the MLS. Now then, salaried people, the public, they often don't think about how pure commission people work, like real estate agents, pure commission. So they wouldn't understand that if I'm using an agent, I should use that agent. Okay. As an agent who's dealing with the public, who don't think like we do, I think it was important under the old system to protect yourself, but also to protect the public and just ask that question. And here's the hypothetical situation. I would have somebody reach out to me and say, hey, I want to see your house. This is under the old system where commissions were guaranteed by the MLS, which is no longer the case. I'd have somebody reach out and say, hey, I would like to see your house. When are you available to show me this house? And I would ask them the simple question, are you working with an agent? And a lot of them would be honest. They would say, yeah, I am, but I feel bad bothering them on the weekend. Or I am, but I'm just shopping right now. And so I'm just talking to listing agents. And when I find the right house, I'm going to use my agent to write the offer. And so they're literally being honest and saying, yes, I don't want to waste their time, my agent, because they're a friend or they're a family member. So I'm going to have you do this for me. And under the old system, it was important as an agent to ask that question to make sure you're not wasting your time or their time. Okay. And I would simply tell them in this situation, the people that were honest, I would say, look, I get it. You don't want to waste anybody's time, but here's the thing. I represent clients and I tell them that they're never wasting my time. If there's a property they want to see, then I want to show it to them. And I don't want to just turn them over to another agent so that agent can show it to them. Like I want to actually do my job. You should never feel like I'm a burden. You should never feel like I'm bothering you. Like, let me do my job, please. And so in that hypothetical situation, if an agent doesn't ask that question, they might show somebody houses. And then once they show somebody all these houses, that person finds the one they love. The agent has done all this work. And then they call their cousin, their aunt, their uncle, their neighbor, whoever their best friend is that's a realtor. That realtor writes the offer. That realtor gets the commission that was guaranteed by the MLS. And then the agent that actually did all the work gets nothing. And they have to go fight for the money. And so the fight that they would wage is called procuring cause. Okay. They would go in front of an arbitration panel and they would argue, hey, I am the only reason this house sold. I was communicating with this person. I was showing them houses. I found them the house that they eventually wanted to buy. I showed it to them. I went through all these things, and then they just used this other agent to write an offer. I am the reason this house sold. Okay. That was incredibly important back when commissions were guaranteed by the MLS. What has changed now is commissions are not even posted on the MLS. They're not listed in the MLS. They're not guaranteed by the MLS. Now commissions are guaranteed by you, the buyer. You are the one responsible. So effectively what changed is now commissions are no longer in the MLS. And whenever you sign a buyer broker agreement, every single one that I've ever seen is exclusive buyer broker agreements. That means you are obligating yourself to that real estate agent to only use them to write an offer and see properties and all these other things. You are promising to only use that one agent, and you are promising a certain commission to that agent when you purchase a property. Now then, in almost every instance that I've seen, that agent is requesting in the contract that that commission be paid by the seller in order to satisfy that buyer broker agreement. And so you might obligate yourself to that agent and say, I will only use you to shop for houses for the next 6 months. And then I'm going to pay 2.5% to my agent. That agent is conveying to me, I am going to, as the buyer, I'm going to request this commission be paid by the seller. So odds are you're not going to have to pay that commission. That's the way that relationship works. But either way, as the buyer, you are now the one being obligated to pay that commission. It's not the MLS. It's not the seller. You are the one that is legally signing that I am responsible for this. Now then, here's where it gets interesting. All these buyer broker agreements are exclusive and they require both parties to terminate them. And so what we've seen now is we've seen a situation similar to the old hypothetical scenario that I laid out, where somebody has an agent. They are obligated to that agent. They signed a buyer broker agreement to that agent. And for the record, as a real estate agent, if we don't get that exclusive buyer broker agreement signed prior to showing properties, we get fined. So I would get a fine, and it starts at like $1,000. If I show properties to somebody and I don't have you signed up to a buyer broker agreement, I get fined. So if an agent is showing you properties, odds are you've signed one of these. So hypothetically, you meet this agent, you're a buyer, you meet an agent. That agent goes over the buyer broker agreement with you, hopefully properly, hopefully well. Hopefully it's not a 6 or 7 page long, very confusing, lawyered up document. Hopefully it's short and simple and it just explains your obligations. That's the way they should be. Or if not, hopefully that real estate agent brought a lawyer to the table to explain the document to you, because I've seen some big, huge, long agreements that no one can understand, and that's not good for anybody. If the real estate agent cannot explain the document to you that they expect you to sign, that's a big red flag, in my opinion. But this agent, you have obligated yourself to, you've signed this exclusive buyer broker agreement, and now they're out showing you properties. Now, let's say for whatever reason, you don't like that agent, or the agent isn't communicating properly, or you think that agent just isn't a good agent. They're not doing their job, or that agent is not available to you. They're not communicating. They're saying they don't show houses in the evenings and weekends when you're available to see them. Or you're just a buyer that doesn't believe that this document matters. And so you're going to go contact a new agent. Well, guess what that new agent is going to do? They are going to ask you to sign an exclusive buyer broker agreement before they show you properties. Now, that buyer is obligated to at least 2 brokers and is legally obligated to pay both of them when they buy a property. And this could continue to go on forever. So here's where it gets interesting. I think you have a situation in which buyers don't understand that they're obligating themselves to multiple people. And you get a situation in which they might think that no one's just going to do anything to them. They might think, oh, this is not a big deal. They might think whatever. I don't know. But maybe they don't understand fully what they're doing. Or maybe they just think it doesn't matter. They think, oh, I'll never get sued. But either way, what's changed is, and this is super important, what's changed is in the old system, these 2 agents had a guaranteed commission by the MLS that the seller had to pay, but it's guaranteed by the MLS. And so there's a set number. that they could go in front of a body and argue about who should get paid, or should they split it, or what should happen. They could argue procuring cause. Now commissions are not guaranteed by the MLS. They're not guaranteed by the seller. And so procuring cause shouldn't exist, right? What are your, I mean, you might be the one that procured the buyer, but if you procured the buyer, then you should have a document with that exclusive buyer broker agreement that states that that buyer owes you money. Effectively, procuring cause existed to figure out who was going to get the commission guaranteed by the MLS, but the commission's not guaranteed anymore. So now, what is the purpose of procuring cause? You can argue who procured the buyer for a sale, but it doesn't matter. Ultimately, the buyer has guaranteed you a commission by signing that document. So it doesn't matter whether they use you, doesn't matter whether they don't use you, doesn't matter whether they use you to write the offer and lead them through the process, doesn't matter. They are obligated to owe you money if they buy something during that time period. So why does procuring cause still exist? And we're in a situation where this is being argued, but what is there to fight over? And who is obligated to you? The seller is not obligated to you. The listing agent is not obligated to you. The MLS isn't guaranteeing anything to you. That's all gone. So the only person who has an obligation to make sure you get paid is the person who signed that buyer broker agreement. So my question is, if that buyer doesn't fulfill their obligation, why would you even consider going after the other agent? Okay. And let me give you a hypothetical scenario. An agent signs an exclusive buyer broker agreement with a client. Then they start showing that client houses. Then at some point, for some reason or another, that client speaks to another agent and they find a house they want to buy and they buy it. The new agent that they wind up working with also has an exclusive buyer broker agreement signed. So they have the same document signed, obligating that same buyer to now two different people. But what's important is the new agent doesn't even know there was another agent. They ask, and the person says, no, we're not working with anybody else. Or, and the person says, you know what, I am working with somebody else, but I sent them a message saying I don't want to work with them anymore. I texted them, I emailed them, whatever. As the new agent, I feel like we are obligated to inform them, hey, you probably cannot unilaterally terminate that agreement. And you might still be obligated to that agent. That agent might still go after you for that money because you can't terminate it. You have to agree to terminate it. Do you understand that? Get that in writing. And when that buyer says, no, I understand that, I get it, what do you do? Are we going to tell that buyer, sorry, you have to work with that other agent? You have no choice. You can't buy a house for 6 months if you don't use that agent. Or if you buy a house for the next 6 months, that agent might sue you. Well, here's the thing. While the last instance of that might seem harsh, it's what's supposed to happen. If you obligate yourself contractually to another person that you are going to do this and you're going to pay them this, and then you break that agreement without their permission, without their understanding of that and agreements of that, guess what? They might sue you. But guess who doesn't want to sue their clients? Brokers. No broker out there wants to sue their client or their former client. Nobody wants to be seen as suing the public. So guess what's happening? NAR is still trying to police this issue, likely because nobody wants to sue the buyer who is actually the one at fault. The buyer is the actual one who's obligated. And so I could understand how NAR would have to police this issue when commissions were guaranteed by the MLS, and the MLSs are all tied to NAR, at least for the most part. They're tied to NAR. So of course, NAR would have to police this issue. But now commissions are completely taken out of the MLS. Commissions are not guaranteed by the MLS. Commissions are now guaranteed by the buyer. And if a buyer doesn't fulfill their agreement, or if the buyer signs multiple agreements with multiple brokers, guess who's at fault? Guess who's liable? The buyer. If you don't want to go after your buyer, get better, more honest buyers. I think that's a reasonable thing to say. If you don't want to sue your buyer, then put in the buyer broker agreement whatever the maximum is to bring them to small claims court. I don't know. But the point is, no other brokerage is guaranteeing your commission if you're a buyer's agent. The MLS is not guaranteeing your commission. So why would you complain to another broker or another agent or anybody other than the buyer who is obligated to you to pay your fee? Here's the most important question. How is another agent who has no idea your contract exists? They are not a party to it. They don't even know you exist. They didn't sign it. How are they obligated to fulfill that. They're not. And yet, for whatever reason, we're hearing arguments that they are. Like, think about this. An agent has no clue that a buyer signed an agreement with another agent. No clue. They don't know that agent exists. They don't know that that document exists. They've never read it. They've never signed it. They've never done nothing. But when that agent who had the original buyer broker agreement doesn't get to write the offer and get paid by the seller or by that buyer, they are not pointing the finger at the buyer and saying, you need to fulfill the agreement that you signed and read and obligated yourself to. No, they're going to go after the agent who has no clue that it even exists. Someone explain this to me. I don't understand. And look, I spoke to numerous people about this, and I said the equivalent of this. Imagine you're a homeowner. So let's take the real estate angle out of this. Imagine you're a homeowner and you sign a contract with a roofing company to get your house re-roofed. Okay, get your roof done. But then, for whatever reason, you change your mind. You don't want to use them. You don't tell them anything, or you do tell them something. It doesn't matter. But you don't use the original roofing company. You use a new roofing company. You sign a contract with another roofing company. Okay, that new roofing company comes out. They roof your house. Well, when the original roofing company that you also signed a contract with, when they go out to roof your house and they see it's already been done, they get frustrated. Who are they going to go after? If they are entitled to money based on your contract, who are they going to go after? Are they going to go after the new roofing company who had no idea that there was an original roofing company? Why would they do that? How would the new roofing company have any obligation to a contract that they're not a party of? They don't know it even exists. They never got a chance to read it. Would the new roofing company be expected to give half the money to the other roofing company to make it right in some way? No. The original roofing company needs to have the audacity to go after the person who's actually obligated by a legally binding contract. And that would be the homeowner. And if they don't want to do that, then they should let it go. But if they want to get paid, that's their target. That's who they need to go after. And so I guess the overarching message to everyone, if you're a buyer, understand you're obligating yourself to that agent. You have to use that agent. Make sure that agent explains that document to you. If you are that agent, be prepared to enforce that document. Don't be prepared to put pressure on everyone other than that person. That is the person you are obligating. That is the person you are obligated to. You need to be prepared to do what you think is right by the person who actually owes you money, not anybody else. And here's, I guess, the advice for the industry. If we are creating a policy in which we are obligating a buyer to a buyer's agent, and then we are seeking to enforce everyone other than that buyer, everyone other than that person, if we're willing to go after anybody other than the person who actually is contractually and legally obligated to pay that fine, pay that fee, pay that commission, then these buyer broker agreements mean absolutely nothing. They are pointless, okay? They are completely pointless if brokers are not willing to enforce the document against the person who signed it. They are pointless. I hope this has been illuminating for everybody. And I hope everybody will understand procuring cause should have gone away the moment that we're requiring buyer broker agreements. And the moment that all commissions were taken out of the MLS, it doesn't matter. It truly doesn't matter who anybody thinks is owed what, because the only thing that matters is you have a legally binding buyer broker agreement. What does that say? Did you get paid that? No? Okay, the buyer owes it. Now go get paid. Hire a lawyer, go get paid. Anything other than that, I don't know. It's like it's a nanny thing. It's people that have no control over a situation, has nothing to do with them, trying to get involved and make sure something happens when what should happen is right in front of your face. The buyer broker agreement has been signed by a buyer. Guess who owes you money? They do. Nobody else. Not some other agent who doesn't know you exist. Not your neighbor down the street. Not some other brokerage in another town. The only person obligated is that buyer. I welcome anybody who wants to talk about this or debate this or give me some other alternative here. I just don't see one. Thanks. Have a great day.